watching Anews. I'm Elif Saatçoğlu and this is Türkiye's diplomacy. Have passed since Israel's assault on Gaza began, a war that has left over 67,000 Palestinians dead and millions displaced. The International Court of Justice and the United Nations have both affirmed that Israel's actions amount to a genocide as famine and disease tighten their grip on a besieged population. Global outrage continues to grow with mass protests from Sydney to London demanding justice and accountability. The destruction of hospitals, refugee camps and aid convoys has deepened the humanitarian catastrophe, while international community debates recognition of Palestine and legal action against Israeli leaders. As Gaza marks this grim anniversary, the world is once again forced to confront the question: how much longer can this suffering be allowed to continue?
The second anniversary of Israel's military campaign in Gaza was marked with solemn commemorations and renewed international condemnation. Critics described the offensive as an act of ethnic cleansing and genocide that devastated Palestinian lives and eroded Israel's standing in the global arena.
The entire world is united in its desire to end the war, to stop the fighting and to establish a Palestinian state eventually. I see a dim light at the end of the tunnel. It will be good for everyone.
Over the past 2 years, Israel's actions in Gaza have left tens of thousands dead, displaced millions, and leveled vast areas of civilian infrastructure. Human rights organizations, the United Nations, and governments worldwide have accused Israel of using disproportionate force and violating international humanitarian law, while calls for accountability continue to mount.
I appeal to Allah to make the truce succeed, because the people are truly tired after 2 years of displacement. We are very tired. Today we appeal to Allah to end the suffering of the Palestinian people after this great destruction that we never expected.
Meanwhile, Israel faces deepening diplomatic isolation. Several countries have recalled ambassadors, downgraded relations, or recognized the state of Palestine in recent months. Regional blocs such as the African Union and the Arab League have issued strong statements condemning what they describe as Israel's systematic oppression of Palestinians.
I hope is in Allah alone, because there is no hope that Netanyahu and Trump will implement this deal. They hoped Hamas would not agree to the deal, but Hamas agreed despite all the circumstances and all the disadvantages in the deal.
Analysts say the anniversary underscores a widening gap. While Israel maintains close ties with Washington, its global reputation has sharply deteriorated. Increasingly, governments and grassroots movements alike demand a just political solution to the conflict and accountability for crimes committed.
We are all worried that the ceasefire will not happen, and this is the final stage. It is a big problem. We have been displaced. The displacement has humiliated all the people in us. We have been thrown in the streets. The lack of ceasefire has been a big problem.
For Palestinians in Gaza, however, the second anniversary is less about geopolitics and more about survival. Entire communities remain displaced, reconstruction has barely begun, and the humanitarian crisis shows little sign of easing. As the world reflects on the legacy of the offensive, many argue that Israel's international isolation will only deepen unless meaningful progress is made toward justice, accountability, and a lasting peace.
There is not 1% of hope because they gave us hope before and said there would be a truce and then the truce was ruined. They said there would be negotiations and then the negotiations were ruined. We are 2 years into this war, and we have not seen any progress or anything on the ground that would make us hopeful that the truce will continue.
And it's been 2 years. We have been talking about the same thing for 3 years, and actually quite it's been longer than that, but Let's start talking about it now with my guests. My dear guests are here. Mehmet Çelik and Nurhan Al-Baya is here. Thank you so much for joining us. Both of you are really have been really helpful to us about the Palestinian issue. So let's talk about the second anniversary today. Nurhan, let's start with you first. What would you say about this important day? Let's start with the sentimentals, then we can go deep delving to the ideas.
It's so sad, actually. We reached to this point. We reached to 2 years of massacre, 2 years of catastrophic level aggression, man-made famine. Everything happened on those 2 years. Everything. Yes. They didn't leave any empty space. They didn't leave anything. No, they just walking towards a very or in a very aggressive track, non-stop. They didn't even. No one even tried to stop them. Of course, we cannot forget the trials of United Nations, but United Nations as organization was not enough, still is not enough compared to powerful countries, role countries like, for example, America, like European countries. Lately, we started realizing a kind of lenient behaviors, lenient reactions, for example, like the statehood recognition in the last United Nations General Assembly from a couple of European and Western countries, but still it's not enough till we reach to the peace deal from Trump and Trump administration, which includes 90 points. It has so many details. I have so many comments related to this agreement. I cannot call it, from my perspective, it's completely or 100% peace agreement, because it has so many weak points. It has so many
leaning
points
on to something else.
Exactly, and it's gonna affect Gaza and Gaza people negatively. So I cannot call it peace, but now we are focusing on only two things. Number one, ceasefire. We need to end the circle up. The circle should be done. We have to end it in a way or another. So ceasefire, number one. Number two, a humanitarian aid should start accessing
immediately, like yesterday.
Exactly. And of course, the hostages situation it should be solved and returned definitely from Israeli side and from Palestinian side. We cannot forget the huge amount of Palestinian people in Israeli jails still, and big names still in the jail. We cannot forget Marwan al-Barghouthi. Marwan al-Barghouthi is a very big name. Hamas and the Palestinian government always demanding to release him in each hostages deal, but also always Israeli government is refusing this demand from the Palestinian Authority. Still, they have hope in this deal to release Marwan al-Barghouthi. We are still waiting for this. We will see if he will be released or not. Still, we don't have a clear vision of the number of Palestinian people in Israeli jail, how much the Israeli government will release. Still, things are not clear yet, especially today, the second anniversary of the Israel attack on Gaza. But since morning, Israel didn't stop bombing, didn't stop attacking Gaza people.
That's like a sign that they're trying to underline as well. This is like a show.
It's exactly same as what happened last year in the first anniversary. It was very intense. The bomb was so intense. It's like remind from
It's
Israel.
gonna continue.
Exactly.
So
We will not stop.
I have to do the back and forth, so I will come back to you on that. But let's turn to Mehmet, because Nurhan had interesting points. Let me ask the first her point and then the reflections that you have. But I do wonder your opinion about the fact that she said this Trump administration's peace plan is not good for Palestinians. What would you say about that? Do you agree with that, or are you in the more positive side?
Well, first of all, I think any steps towards a peace deal is a positive sign. But of course, when we look at this 20-point plan, it was something that was agreed during Trump's meeting with Muslim and Arab leaders in Washington last week or right after the UNGA. Nevertheless, I think that text, the 20-point text, we know now that it was changed after Netanyahu's meeting with Donald Trump, and the changed action plan was shared with the media and announced as a 20-point peace deal. When we look at this plan, in addition to exchange of hostages, for example, when we look at the the board that will be governing Gaza, there's very controversial names, for example, like Tony Blair. In addition to the fact that, the presence of Palestinians at that body is a big question.
Right.
In terms of talking about areas beyond Gaza, like West Bank, annexation of West Bank, which Donald Trump himself was speaking about very frequently right before that announcement of the 20-point plan, that is not present in this plan. So we see that the disarmament, for example, of Hamas, who will they transfer their arms to? If there will be an election, let's say, and if they want Hamas to be disarmed and continue as let's say, a political party.
So many empty points, actually.
What if Hamas will be re-elected? Then what by the Palestinians? So I think the biggest problem is that this point, it's the 20-point plan, is not guaranteeing any security, political or sovereignty rights for Palestinians in the medium and long term. In the short term, even, there's a lot of vague points. There's a lot of vague terms and terms that need to be unfolded to exactly pinpoint what they mean for Palestinians as a people, not just for people in Gaza, but for, is there a two-state solution in this plan? What that two-state solution will look like in case even it happens. And what about the borders that will be drawn around Gaza itself by the Israeli security, as they call it, like a buffer zone, basically. Yeah. So I think this plan is, this is why Hamas saying we are going to, we are agreeing with the exchange of hostages, but the rest needs to be negotiated.
Mm-hmm. That is quite literally the situation. But do you think that it is going to be able to unfold? Because I was meaning to ask you about after 2 years, how do you feel like the situation is unfolding right now? Are we in a place that finally gives us some hope, or are we just going down and down like?
Oh, that's a very question hard to answer, because there's so many different variables that are very dynamic. I mean, Israel's position, as long as Israel has this, perverse interpretation of a holy text, and they align that with Zionist ideology and the expansion of occupation beyond Palestinian territories, it will be hard to reach a settlement with them, because ultimately the goal is to occupy Palestinian territories, and to move the expansion beyond even what we call as occupied Palestine. But in addition to that, I think, whether there's hope or not for a peace deal will also depend on how much support does the U.S. government, U.S. state willing to put behind Israel's genocide in the occupied territories, whether there is a discrepancy between Netanyahu and Donald Trump, how much more Netanyahu can stay in power, how long more he can stay in power, given the friction between him and Donald Trump, and also the constant pressure from domestic politics. So there's a lot that needs to be unfolded. But I think looking back in 2 years, to reflect on what happened and beyond today's date, I think it has been a moment of exposure for history. What did this expose to us, this genocide taking place? First of all, it exposed that Israel sees no limits when it comes to destruction, when it comes to killing, when it comes to eliminating or violating anything that was agreed by the international community, international law, international norms.
Yes.
So
let me cut in for a second just to say that on the screens right now that we are seeing live, that the feature that we have been talking about, the attack is still continuing. This is live footage that we have on
So it has exposed the fact that multilateral world system, governance system is dysfunctional. The UN system is dysfunctional. The international community remains idle despite a genocide taking place live, as you just said, on cameras, despite the fact that it has been live streamed through cell phones since October 7. International community remains idle. And this is an exposure that it is not a just system that we are governed by. And what I mean by is the UN Security Council, because it serves the interests of the permanent 5 members. The United States vetoes, you cannot even deliver humanitarian aid to people in Gaza. It shows that there's double standards when it comes to human rights, when it comes to freedom of press, as over 200 journalists have been killed since October 7, and no one has done anything to stop that.
That's against every law that we have to kill the journalists.
Since day one, hospitals have been bombed. Places of worship have been bombed. Civilian refugee camps have been bombed. UN staff have been killed, and the international community is remaining out. So it's been an exposure moment that this unjust system must be replaced with one that will not only protect the powerful, but it will protect justice rather than the rule of those who have the power to bully the others or to destroy the others. I think that moment has been exposed because there is also a different media narrative now coming out from literally Gaza streets, as the Western media bias is no longer the only frame that the world is watching news through. I think the alternative voices, alternative mediums, showing the dark faces or the dark moments of this history in the past 2 years has also been changing international community's public opinion about Israel, about international community, about those who support Israel. Israel, even with the Smooth Flotilla very recently, right? The activists tried to break the siege and the blockade on Gaza. But I think what has been broken in the past 2 years is the siege and the blockade on people's minds that Israel had built through Hollywood, through intellectuals, and through Western media. That has also been broken, and that reality about that victimization is exposed because Israel can no longer play that victim card because they are carrying out a genocide and war crimes like no other times of our modern history. So whether after 2 years we're talking about peace or we're talking about ceasefire, not even peace really, because peace can only be established when there is a two-state solution with East Jerusalem as capital of Palestine and with 1967 internationally accepted borders. Without realization of a sovereign and free Palestinian state, I am afraid there will be no peace through oppression, dispossession, through occupation, violence, and killing. Now, looking into this week and last week and these 20 points or negotiation with Hamas, I think Hamas has been willing to negotiate and to find a medium way. But every time there was a table set up in Qatar, for example, the table itself was bombed by Israel. That negotiation platform, Israel attacked Doha, a place where the two sides had come together to find some sort of common ground, at least to negotiate with one another for very simple and basic steps to be taken to actually facilitate some sort of ceasefire. But so far we see that an Israeli side is nowhere close in that mindset of trying to find a midway or trying to find some sort of peace that will also take into consideration Palestinians' concerns.
Well, when your point of view, Sar, reminded me that when we were talking about the UN body, how funny it takes us all the way back that the world is indeed bigger than 5, and it should be, because it is for the moments that is like this. It's been 2 years. And for my question is to both of you, actually, before we have another guest that I'm going to involve in the broadcast. So really short answers to both. I do wonder what you think about had it was another country rather than Israel that does the half of these situations, that does the half of these violations, how would the world act differently, Nurhan?
The world definitely, yeah, of course. Yeah. Minimum, number one, the power. We shouldn't forget the power that will come from powerful countries.
Quite true.
Again, the backbone of Israel, the strongest ally for Israel in this or in this operation, or let's call it the attack on Gaza, or it's not since not since October 7th. It's before that. But now let's talk about October 7th. America, the most powerful country and power in the world. So we shouldn't forget this. If another country will act same as Israel, I think the reactions from the international community will totally be different, because even the reaction and the behavior from America will be different. The pressure, the amount of pressure will be different. Sanctions.
Correct.
Till now,
we've seen with the Russian-Ukraine situation.
Exactly. Till now, United Nations failed to apply sanctions on Israel. The international community failed to apply sanctions on Israel. Why? Because of the...
It is Israel.
Because of the ally, exactly, United States. How many times United States used veto to support Israel? 6 times since October 7th. 6 times they used it.
Without any something to back it up with.
Exactly.
People are dying. 67,000 people have died. We have been talking about it like it's just a random number. Those are like 67,000 individuals lost their lives because Israel was being greedy. That just explains quite a lot.
And the last time it was last month. Morgan, the representative of United States in the UN Security Council, she used the veto to refuse ceasefire in Gaza. So this support, this amount, the huge amount of support. That's why if this act happened from different country, definitely the reactions from international community, from United States, definitely, and United Nations, will be totally different.
Yeah, that's your opinion, and I agree with that. Now, Mehmet, what would you say about this? It's like inevitable answer that we are all going to have the same, but regardless of that, I want to hear your opinion.
Well, of course, when those who are killed, there's a deep history in that bias about the victim when it comes from the global south. Now, do we not have bombings and conflicts and attacks all around the world almost every day? I mean, in many places around the world, almost every day, right? But when it is a blonde hair, blue eye individual being killed, it always makes the headlines. But when it is somebody else, it doesn't make the headlines. Ukrainian refugees, when the presenter, when Ukrainian refugees, and I'm not, of course, comparing them, but because there's also a tragedy, something that shouldn't be accepted in Ukraine as well. The invasion of Russia and shouldn't also be accepted. But when there were Ukrainian refugees, in one of the channels in the Western media, they were saying, oh, these are These are people with blue hair, blue eyes and blonde hair, just like one of us. Well, what about the Syrian refugees that were coming into Europe, European countries? Because their hair color was different, they were seen as you know, they're still seen as a burden.
Not going to happen to them. Not going to happen to the white
exactly.
people.
There were barbed wires erected against them, right? Now, that double standard of the very Eurocentric, very almost racist and fascist, I think, and it's inherently problematic in that sense, has a lot to do with how the world is seen from one point of view. When the victim is not from the European capitals, is not from North America or Israel, then it becomes just a statistics. You said 67,000 people. This is only those who are officially counted. Those who are under the rubbles and have not been even rescued from, or their bodies have not been taken from under the rubbles, they are not counted. We're talking about 67,000, but we're not talking about the hundreds of thousands of those who are displaced. We're not talking about those who are killed in West Bank. We're not talking about the illegal occupation that, I mean, we're not counting this number, that has been going on since over 7 decades. We're not talking about, when we say 67,000, we're not talking about the destruction, you know, the infrastructure, the hospitals and all the other
people who lost their body parts, by the way.
Parts.
This is so important.
The children that will be left without parents, the children that were killed. I mean, these are not combatants. They're not soldiers that were killed. These are mostly civilian, and a big chunk of this is children. Yeah. Children that have lost their body parts, that amputated is one of the biggest in modern history. I mean, these are mothers. So there's children that will have no mothers. These are fathers. There's women will have no husband and children without a father. These are children, babies that their parents will mourn for. But I think this is all unfolding while that Eurocentric mentality sees only these as a statistics, and we just as a body count.
Yes.
But this is history, and unfortunately, those who remain idle will not be. They are not on the right side of the history, and their consciousness will haunt them in the years coming. For the fact that they remained idle when all these atrocities will take place.
Well, if you're not white enough, you don't deserve the recognition of the international community, according to some of the Western organizations. Not all of them, thankfully, but some of them are really, the fascism is going up and up like the times of the Second World War, and this is actually the reflection of that. Thankfully, this is not what is going on in the around the people. The people are different than that. Azam Tamimi is joining us right now, and he's in London. And London has one of the biggest protests that is unfolding at the moment. And that is thankful, because it reflects us that the stance of the governments are not same with the stances of the people who are white or brown or whatever the race or ethnicity or religion they are in. So Azam, thank you so much for joining us in this important day. I wish it wasn't continuing like this, but it does. So what would you say about what is unfolding right now? And what would you say about the protests that is going on in London? Can you share about the atmosphere overall?
Well, thank you very much for having me. I think the world is changing, and the world is changing because of Gaza. The world has been changing since the 7th of October 2 years ago. And we are seeing the gap for the first time widening on Palestine between the people and the government. The government position is one side, and the people's position is on another side. This is not just in the UK, although the UK is leading the trend, but it's worldwide, even in America, across Europe and elsewhere. And that is because for the first time, people are asking the real questions, and they are seeking real information about the roots of this conflict. This is not a communal conflict. This is not conflict between two neighbors fighting over a piece of land. People are discovering that this is an imperialist legacy, that this is another colonial project that Europe, led by Britain and France after the First World War, decided after destroying the Ottoman Empire to create a Zionist entity right in the heart of the Arab and Muslim world in order to prevent this ummah from ever rising again and standing on its feet. This is the reality, and they've discovered that the Palestinians have all along been the victims, and that these Zionists who claim to speak in the name of Judaism and the Jews were not actually representatives of the Jews, because at the time when Zionism started, most of the Jews around the world were opposed to Zionism. And today we are seeing this trend happening again. An increasing number of Jews are saying, not in our name. They are protesting with us against Zionism. And they are saying, Zionism does not represent us. Netanyahu does not represent us. And I think this is very similar to what happened in Vietnam in 1968, when world opinion started changing, and that eventually led to the withdrawal of America from Vietnam. And just as one American writer said 2 years ago, commenting on the events of the 7th of October, as the Tet Offensive in Vietnam in 1968 led to the freedom of Vietnam, the 7th of October might one day lead to the freedom of Palestine.
So thank you so much for that, highlighting that up, because it is important that Jews are not also against Zionism, and the Zionism has taken over the world right now. We have been talking about the Netanyahu governance, and it makes me wonder how much of a 9-life situation in the names of politics that he has over going on. So what would you say about his stance and its reflection on people who are abroad, but I am sure that your heart is with Palestine right now. So what would you say about this 2 years and the stance of Netanyahu? And do you think that the ceasefire this time is going to be reached out? Or even, do you want Hamas to finally say yes to these conditions that was given to them by United States?
Well, first of all, this war has been dragging on because of Netanyahu. Netanyahu has domestic problems, and the war was covering him, because otherwise he would have been imprisoned by now because of his corruption and because of the charges made against him. Now, as far as Hamas is concerned, Hamas is an organization based on an idea, not on a certain personality, not on a certain cult or an elitist group. And the idea is that if you are a Muslim, you live in this life for a mission, and your mission is to stand for justice and against oppression. And these Zionists came from Europe and invaded our country and displaced our people, took my mother's house, took my father's land, and therefore it is my duty to resist. If I die while resisting, then I am a martyr. Then this is the noblest of things. And therefore, there is no regret about all these sacrifices. And if Hamas as an organization is finished, there will be another organization, and the struggle will continue. My grandfather was in the resistance. My father was in the resistance. My generation is involved in the resistance, and the generation of my children and grandchildren will be involved in the resistance. This is going to continue until Palestine is once again, inshallah, free.
Well, the voice of the resistance itself, Azam Tamimi, is one of them. And I want to turn to, I will keep you there, Azam, and I will turn to my guests. Since Mehmet is not going to be with us on the next hour, let's start with you, Mehmet. What would you say about his statements? We were talking about more technical stuff, but this is sentiment. This is a person who has had generations, and it is ironically, this is a generational trauma right now, but they're still trying to unfold this situation. What is your take on that?
Well, I agree the fact that, where there is an oppression, resistance to that oppression is inevitable. Yeah. Whether this is done through the faction A or faction B or A group or B group, it doesn't matter. Hamas is there today. 10 years ago, decades ago, when the first resistance started, Hamas wasn't there. Hamas may not be here tomorrow, but that resistance will be there for the Palestinians. Palestinians are not resistance because they all ideologically agree with Hamas, or they all agree with PLO, or they all agree with Fatah. No, this is not the case. Palestinians, even those who are apolitical, they don't affiliate themselves with any of these groups, they still resist because their homes are being occupied. Their cities, their towns, their land is being occupied, and they are taken away, pushed away from this history that they have built over centuries in this land. When this is the case, it's not about ideology. It's about the very basic survival instinct that you try to protect what you have when there is an attack against your territory, against what you have built with your hands through centuries. And it is also about your future, how you want to live, where you want to live, and what you want to call home, where you want to call a home for the generations that will be coming after you. If this is your home, you want your generations to be continuing this lineage in the territories that you have called home for many decades. As long as there is that occupation, regardless of these affiliations, these groups that are not even as similar to one another, there will be a new generation of resistance, even if Hamas is eliminated. Hamas is not an ideology, perhaps, that not all Palestinians may even be affiliated themselves with. So when this is the case, I think what is being sidelined or not being thought well by those who support this destruction is that it is not about Hamas, it's about Palestine and Palestinian people as a whole. As a side note, I think the unity, political unity within Palestine is also important for that struggle, for that resistance as a people, rather than rivalry or competition amongst themselves. So as a side note, I'm putting that out there, but in the bigger picture, the resistance cannot be diminished to Hamas, cannot be diminished to Fatah or PLO. It's about people.
Well, Mehmet, this is the situation. Yes, Hamas is probably going to not be here one day, but the resistance will continue.
As long as the occupation continues.
Yeah, this coexisting together.
Yeah, a free Palestine is not established, that resistance will be there because the occupier is violent. The occupier is destroying not only the infrastructure, but the aim is to destroy a future for Palestinians in the occupied territories.
Obviously, yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for that. And Nurhan, what would you say about Azam's points? And Mehmet has highlighted really important points. What is your sentiment on that?
I totally agree, because if we just remembered what Israel did with previous and old Hamas and Fatah and in general Palestinian leaders before. For example, Sheikh Yassin, one of the most significant leaders. How did they killed him? And before killing, how they arrested him? How many years he stayed in Israeli jail? Till which age? He was praying at night, and we cannot forget that. He was on a wheelchair. He was not walking.
Yes.
He just left the mosque and they bombed him directly. So the question here, that much he was threatening you, that old man on wheelchair, that much scared you?
I think what is, just to add to your point, I think what is important here is that they are destroying, let's say, Hamas, and describing them as being radicals and violent and terrorists, as they have described them. But the new generation will be more radical because of the destruction today.
Because they have seen it.
Because they have seen it, because they have lived through it, as they have never before, because the genocide is also being recorded. I think this is also important for future generations. Perhaps what we saw 100 years ago or 70 years ago is not as widely recorded, or it was recorded only by certain people and only to a certain degree. But what is taking place today, what is being live streamed today, is being recorded in detail, and the future generations will see that. And that radicalization is something that I think Israel is setting up itself for. And this is also, in addition to the isolation that Israel is putting itself into, when the whole world is basically, I'm not talking about the states, but the international community sees Israel on the wrong side of history.
That is quite true. We have been talking about the recording of the situation, but it is important that these are going to stay with us. Remember what has happened in 1995 in Bosnia? That was a recorded genocide, but this time it's even more. We have phones, we have different
media.
outlets, we have social media. So we have a footage of HD quality footage of kids seeing their parents die. How can you expect them not to feel radicalized by that?
Yeah.
This will also strengthen their determination, will strengthen their willingness to move to higher and advanced level. Same as I just mentioned, Sheikh Yassin.
Yes.
After that, Sheikh Yassin was from different generation. What happened after him? Yahya Sinwar came. Those are from totally different generation. Yahya Sinwar came. Al-Aruri came, Ismail Haniya came, and so many more leaders from Hamas. Okay, they killed them. From the
they
new,
were even
newer
even more intense. They were not like the previous leaders. They were even more intense. They were even more radicalized.
The aggression is higher.
Yes, the more you kill them, the aggressive they come up with the next generation. I mean, you have heard on the field that even the last Palestinian, before the last Palestinian dies, we are always going to be aggressive. We're always going to be resisting, they say. When we consider all of these situations, isn't it inevitable that they are going to be full of hate, rightfully so, in the next generation?
But of course, because especially this attack on Gaza, before, we have witnessed so many attacks on Gaza, but this was the longest and the most aggressive one. This will remain in the memories of the children of Gaza. And I am sure they are thinking, or America or Israel, they are thinking that after this peace plan, we're gonna end up, we're gonna already done, we're gonna kill Hamas. The head of snake, and they are saying, but you will not kill them. You will not kill, or you will not kill Hamas. It's ideology. It's more than that.
The name can change. The ideology is going to stay the same.
Exactly.
With that, I will actually have to turn to Azam because he's going to leave also at the end of the hour. So Azam, can you walk us through about this situation that we have been talking about? The resistance is more than Hamas, more than politics, more than something that we can pinpoint. It is a sentiment, it's an idea, it is something that runs through the souls of the Palestinians. What would you say about that?
Well, not only that, all of this is true, of course, but remember one very important thing. This conflict is not just between the Palestinians and the Zionist invaders of Palestine. Palestine, until about 100 years ago, was part of the Ummah. It was never a state of its own. It was part of this vast Muslim Ummah.
We will continue with that, but there is a technical issue with the voice, and we will continue with you. Then we have to get it fixed. Whilst we are getting it fixed, I will turn to Mehmet and ask his opinions about that, because Nurhan's points was the idea about the idea. What would you say about the ideology-wise?
Well, I think there's no ideology of oppression.
Yes.
Unless it is based on fascism, unless it's based on racism, unless it's based on economic imperialism, unless it's based on colonialism. Any ideology that in this time, in 2025, that is promising a better world should not be destroying others in the expense of, should not be setting up that better world at the expense of a race, clearing a race off the earth. The ideology, the Zionist ideology that is fighting Palestinian babies right now, sees a baby in a hospital bed as a threat to itself, because they believe that, a long time ago, one of the Israeli ministers says we should kill all Palestinian mothers because they will give birth to children that will be fighting against us. This is the ideology that sees no limits, no norms, no values, no ethics when it comes to their perverse, that perverse interpretation of a holy text and the so-called Greater Israel plan that will seek to even expand the occupation beyond Gaza. So I think when the previous speaker was speaking about this is not just about Palestine, it is true because the ultimate aim is to occupy parts of Syria, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, move into all the way to Turkey. The maps that some of these far-right radical ministers show includes, they have, this is no longer a conspiracy theory, no longer a secret. These are very shared with the public, open sources have all that, all those maps that this ideology is seen as something that is promised to them. And the people that they see as the only worthy of living are themselves. If this is the case, anything that comes on their way is worthless. This is why they don't have a problem with destroying, they don't have a problem with illegal settlements, they don't have a problem. They say, I have to come and take your home because you're not worthy of living here, basically. I will kill the babies in their mother's womb before they're even born. This is the ideology that the world is watching unfolding through their actions, unfortunately.
That is quite literally true. We were talking about it with Azam, actually, and he's ready now. Azam, sorry about the technical issue. Yeah, we have been talking about the same thing on and on, so you didn't miss anything. But let me let you continue about what you have been saying about the ideology and the soul of the general resistance that is happening in the Palestine and the places that it will continue for a while. What would you say about that?
Well, what I was trying to say is that this, in essence, is not really just the problem for the Palestinians. This aggression was committed against the Muslims, against the Arabs, against the whole Ummah. And the Ummah at the moment is in shackles. Many of the peoples around Palestine, in Egypt, in Jordan, in the Gulf, in North Africa, they are ruled by governments that are not allowing them to come to the aid of their brothers and sisters who are being slaughtered in Palestine. But when the time comes, these peoples will be free again. And when they are free, this will be their cause. It is their cause. It has always been their cause. So this is the problem for the Zionists, is that today they can do to the Palestinians what they think they can do. But there are 2 billion Muslims around the world who consider Palestine to be a Muslim land. They consider Al-Masjid al-Aqsa to be their first Qibla and their third holiest mosque on the face of the earth. This is a big thing. At the same time, what we see today is that the supporters of Palestine around the world, even the non-Muslims, even the Jews, before the 7th of October, they used to compare Israel with apartheid South Africa. Supremacist, racist, etc. But now they're saying it's much worse than apartheid South Africa. It's a reincarnation of the Nazis themselves, because the Nazis were trying to exterminate the Jews in Europe. And this is today what the Zionists are doing in Palestine. They're trying to exterminate the Palestinians. And they're not just doing it, they're even saying it, they're publicizing it. Ministers in the government that is led by Netanyahu have been saying this. They don't want to see any Palestinian around, etc. So now people are realizing that what the Palestinians are fighting against is a movement against humanity, just like the Nazis. The Zionism is an inhumane movement, is a movement against humanity as a whole. And I think we will see very soon in the world developments that will expedite the process of liberating Palestine.
Well, let's see that these developments are going for the best than the worst, because what we are all rooting for is that the free Palestine. Thank you so much, Azam, for joining us, and thank you for joining me through this program as well, Mehmet and Nurhan. It's been a pleasure having you guys here. Let's meet in the better days and meet in the better times that we talk about how the peace is established. But for now, we are talking about the anniversary of the war. And this is our first hour. We are finishing off. We are going to be with Nurhan. But thank you, Mehmet, for joining us in this hour. So this is Turkish Diplomacy.